Hello everybody. My name is Rachel Keighley and I am a third year PhD student at the University of Leicester in the School of Criminology. Today I'm going to be talking to you about online hate against a person's sexuality through the lens of human rights. I'm going to be drawing on my own PhD work for this. But before I start, I just wanted to refer you to the acronym of LGB+. This is merely used as a shorthand only to refer to online hate against a person's sexuality, as this is the specialism and the focus of my research. It is not in any way to discriminate or marginalise T or any other gender identity parts of the acronym. It's just because I believe that hate, online and offline, against a person's sexuality and gender identity are two different things. Gender identity and sexuality are two different aspects of a person's identity with different nuances, different experiences of hate, and therefore different responses required. Therefore, I believe that they ought to be studied separately. So henceforth, within this presentation, if I refer to LGB plus online hate, this is merely a shorthand way of saying online hate against a person's sexuality. As I previously mentioned, I'm going to be drawing on some of my own PhD research. I'm currently in my third year, so I'm in the middle of my data analysis. So if there's anything you want to know more about, please don't hesitate to email me or contact me. I'll be happy to share more. But within my research, I did a survey, an online survey followed by semi-structured interviews, looking at people's experiences of online hate, the impacts of this, and their accessing and their expectations of support services associated with the LGBT community and online hate crime. So I carried out 177 online surveys with individuals that are aged 13 to 25. I chose this age demographic because they are most likely to be online. Over 99% of adults of young people within the UK are online or have a presence online, according to the Office for National Statistics. And they're also more likely to be exposed to hate, according to research, and are more likely to be negatively impacted by such. So I thought that they were quite a key demographic to look at when we're exploring the nature of online hate. So having said that, today I'm going to start questioning what is LGB plus online hate. So this is a useful thing to understand, and we don't currently have a national or even an international definition of online hate crime. However, the CPS offers a useful starting point to define what hate crime itself is. This is offline hate. So they say it's any act that involves a threat, harassment, or attack against a person because they identify as or are perceived to be LGB+. So this definition is useful in that it shows that there's a myriad of ways that hate can manifest, whether that's a threat to a direct physical attack. But one of the things I wanted to question was whether online hate comes under this definition of a hate crime, and indeed whether online hate should be considered a hate crime. So this is one of the things that I asked people throughout the process of my research, is whether they considered online hate to be a hate crime. And the majority of respondents said yes, they think online hate is a hate crime or should be considered a hate crime, with the remaining few people saying that they weren't sure, just due to the lack of clarity on what online hate is within the UK, because we don't currently have a definition of online hate that's clear and nationally used. Moreover, another problem when we're defining hate is that hate crime typically defines the more extreme manifestations of discrimination. So we're talking about physical attacks or very overt levels of hate. It often doesn't encompass something known as microaggressions or everyday hate, which are subtle instances of hate that usually don't reach this threshold level to be considered a crime. And this is something that was the focus of my own research. I didn't just want to look at online hate crimes. I wanted to look at all instances of discrimination targeted at a person based on their sexuality. And this is because basically when we look at microaggressions, they're often dismissed as not being serious enough due to reference to the primacy of free speech. And free speech is something particularly online that has been protected over protecting people from online hate, and this is going to be a theme that runs through both my research and this presentation today. So having said this, I wanted to give you sort of the general layout of the land within the hate crime research and within the levels of hate crime within the UK. So my research is predominantly from the UK context, obviously bearing in mind that online perpetrators and victims don't have to live in the same country. But before we look at the prevalence of online hate, I thought it was useful to share the prevalence of offline hate crimes. So within the UK, the Home Office every year release their hate crime statistics for the 5 protected or monitored strands, being race, religion, sexual orientation, disability, and transgender. And in the year 2019 to 20, if you look on the graph on the screen now, or the table, sorry, hate crimes against a person's sexuality or sexual orientation saw a 19% increase from the previous year's recordings to 15,835 cases, with the other hate crime strands seeing an increase except religion, which saw a 5% decrease. Now we do know, and I won't go into too much detail about this, but we do know from the literature, from research, that this is thought to be a severe underrepresentation of the problem, whether this is due to the fact that people don't report hate crimes to the police or just due to the misrecording of them. 15,835 hate crimes against a person's sexual orientation is probably going to be an underrepresentation. But what we can take away from these figures is that it appears that hate crime against a person's sexuality is on the rise. So having said this, I wanted to share with you the prevalence or the estimated prevalence of LGB plus online hate. Now the Home Office don't currently record online hate crimes within their hate crime statistics. They did in the year 2017 and 18 do some experimental statistics when they were trying to gather a bit more information about what online hate crime looks like. However, these haven't been continued in the past 2 years. But in the year ending March 2018, they recorded 1,065 online hate crimes, 352 of which were against a person's sexuality. Now, there has been other research by the Sussex Hate Crime Project, Gallup, just to name a few, that have also tried to estimate the prevalence of online hate. And they would say that online hate is a lot higher than the Home Office statistics suggest, with anywhere from the range of about 60% to 85% of individuals having experienced LGBT or LGB plus online hate. So within my own research, I wanted to take a closer look at this, but as I've previously mentioned, I didn't just want to look at experiences of online hate crime, but I wanted to look at all the experiences of online hate to fully understand what online hate against a person's sexuality looks like. So I asked people about their experiences of LGB plus online hate, and 64% of respondents said that they had experienced LGB plus online hate, and that is 113 people. 53 said that they'd never experienced online hate, and 11 said that they weren't sure, again, probably due to the lack of clarity on what online hate looks like. I then asked the same individuals within the survey about whether they'd ever observed LGB plus online hate, and a staggering 156 people said that they had, 12 said they hadn't, and 6 said they weren't sure. So what we can take away from this is that this is a much higher percentage of individuals that are experiencing or are exposed to LGB plus online hate than the Home Office statistics are suggesting. And it's certainly a motivating reason for us to start monitoring on an official basis online hate crime. But an important point to consider, as I've already mentioned, when you're looking at online hate crime, are all the instances of hate, so not just those that amount to a crime by law. So I asked my research respondents to give details of the kinds of hate that they have experienced online, and a pattern began to emerge in which they did describe a spectrum of experiences ranging from these microaggressions or subtle instances of hate and discrimination all the way up to more extreme acts such as threats of physical and sexual violence. So people described experiencing verbal abuse, threats, being stalked online, the spreading of rumours, sexual harassment, outing, which is the disclosure of a person's sexual orientation without their consent, doxing, which is the publishing of private or identifying information about a person, which usually results in them being outed, brigading, which is a coordinated online harassment, and emotional abuse. And this just shows the wide, far-reaching spectrum of experiences of online hate that people can experience. And when I asked them about these more subtle instances of hate, one respondent reported that microaggressions do appear online, but they often fly under the radar despite being more pervasive. They are insidious, but they're always there, just below the surface. And when questioned as to why they believe microaggressions, and even to extent online hate as a whole, is so much more common than we once thought, participants suggest that the lack of physical abuse differentiates it from its offline counterpart and is a contributing factor to it not being taken as seriously, and therefore being able to continue unmediated online, as seen in the reflection of a possible rise in online hate over recent years. So online hate is continually treated differently to its offline counterparts. For example, within the UK, hate crime laws are actually often tailored more to offline hate crime. We don't have any specific online hate crime laws. We use things like the Malicious Communications Act, and these result in very few convictions every year. So it is very hard to label an instance of online hate as a hate crime. Research suggests that this lack of attention has led to a silencing of victim voices and attempts to invalidate their experiences through arguments which present the hate crime label as a way of limiting free speech online. And regardless of whether you believe free speech ought to be defended, and indeed it is a very important right in a democratic society, and one that we won't debate too much today, the fact remains that online hate in all its forms is harmful to the targeted individuals. And I will explore more about these impacts in a moment. But first, this research raises the question of what happens when we allow certain instances of hate speech, for example, these microaggressions, to be protected under a free speech doctrine. My research, including some of the quotes that I've shared on screen now, suggests that allowing online hate and microaggressions to proliferate unmediated has negative and damaging consequences for those whose human rights and existence online is being challenged by the hate speech in question. The debate isn't just about whether we ought to allow freedom of speech, but it's about reflecting on what this freedom of speech costs those who are the target of identity-related discrimination. So, for example, one respondent said, "You're free to say what you want as long as it doesn't impinge on my rights to be what I am." But when free speech contains microaggressions that does impinge on a person's right to be free and open about their sexuality online, we create a divided society in which some parts of a person's identity are more accepted or protected than others, both online and offline. And we set a bar under which those that deviate from the sexual and the gender norms are free game for hate speech under the protection of free speech. And we uphold a society in which there is a hierarchy of identity and power structures which prevent equality and equal rights to all. So, online hate, particularly microaggressions, may seem innocuous to some. It may seem like it's not that harmful, it's banter, it shouldn't be taken that seriously, etc. These are all the defences people use. Thus, microaggressions have been placed in this grey area in which their harm is dismissed or undermined, and the comment is justified as free speech, not hate. Yet on the screen now, I've shared some of the impacts and the effects of LGB plus online hate from my research respondents. And as you can see, the effects are large and in some cases severe, with respondents reporting social withdrawal, physical and emotional harms, extreme loss of trust, depression and anxiety, just to name a few. And it's important to point out that it wasn't just the individuals that were experiencing more extreme forms of online hate that are reporting these effects. It's even those that have been experiencing these microaggressions, these subtle instances of everyday hate, that are reporting all these negative effects. So as we can see, no matter how extreme the form of online hate is, the impacts are still negative and still severe on the person in question or even the community at large. So if these are the impacts of all forms of online hate, including these seemingly innocuous microaggressions, we have to question why freedom of speech in these instances is being protected. Because currently the case remains that not everyone remains or feels safe online, with one of my research respondents saying, "You start to realise that online there are no protections for queers or non-cis people. Our only protection there is our own community." And when a minority community describe that their only forms of protection are their peers within the community that is equally marginalised, we can see that society is letting some of its citizens down, despite an obligation to protect everyone from harm, whether the harm originates online or offline. Thus, I think it's important to look at the way society is responding to online hate. And again, this is all forms of online hate. And what I've intended to show thus far is the pervasiveness of all forms of online hate and the extreme nature of the emotional, psychological, and even physical harms and impacts that this causes LGB+ individuals. Yet despite this, my research argues that online hate is continually not managed satisfactorily by those charged with the protection of all citizens online. And this then is a clear demonstration of a violation of the human rights of victims of online hate. So within my research, I looked at the responses from the police, social media services, and alternative support mechanisms, these being LGBT organisations and charities such as Stonewall, Gallup, Stop Hate UK, to name a few. And I wanted to know about LGB+ individuals' experiences and expectations of these support services. I'm currently in the middle of my data analysis, as previously mentioned, so I don't yet have any firm statistics for you on these matters. So if you are interested and you want to know any more, then please don't hesitate to get in contact with me. I've put my email address at the beginning and at the end of this presentation. So to begin with, I want to look at the police response to online hate. And as we know from the hate crime literature, there is a huge lack of trust in the police to adequately deal with hate. And therefore very little is typically reported to the police. And this is reflected within my own research, in which only 6 people who had experienced online hate had ever reported an incident to the police. And they said that none of these were ever dealt with satisfactorily as well. And research participants that didn't report to the police cited their reasons that it would not be taken seriously and that nothing would come of the report, so it was a waste of their time. A handful more hate experiences have been reported to social media sites, often through their automated reporting forms. However, these are also rarely dealt with the social media platform determining that the hateful event in question does not violate the site's community standards on free speech. And if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the common Facebook response when someone does try and report an instance of hate online. Social media sites have thus been accused of protecting free speech and allowing content that is harmful and hateful to remain online. And a couple of very recent examples include celebrities that have been tweeting anti-Semitic tweets, and also J.K. Rowling and the accusations of transphobia and the transphobic tweets that she's been allowed to share with the world. Finally, online hate can be reported to alternative support mechanisms such as LGBT charities and organisations. And these are absolutely fantastic, and I've seen firsthand what local and more national organisations can do for victims of online hate and for the LGBT community as a whole. However, my research suggests that individuals aren't actually aware of the existence of many of these support services. I asked them if they were aware of any. I brought their attention to some of them, and with the exception of Stonewall, in which about 75% of my research respondents had heard of Stonewall, most people hadn't heard of any of the other organisations. And this then impacts the ability of these fantastic organisations to respond to the rising levels of online hate and to give support to those in need, especially because they already have the infrastructure to support these individuals. The main criticism from my research participants was that they didn't even know that they existed, so didn't know they could turn to them. So what is in dire need of change is our response to online hate, as we offer comprehensive and cohesive support to targeted individuals. Thus, I now want to outline some future recommendations that are worthy of increased attention within the context of academic research, policy, and just social services at large. So first, there needs to be greater recognition for online hate in all its forms. As shown, all instances of online hate are harmful to the victim. Therefore, we need to expand our understanding and ability to recognise all forms of online hate, including microaggressions, and challenge them when we see them. Consequently, we need a shift in our understanding of what free speech means. Perhaps free speech protection should not extend to speech that is hateful and deliberately targets an individual based on an aspect of their identity, for example, their sexuality. To do so is to take away the human rights of minority communities and to undermine the fact that hate speech in all its forms hurts. We also need improvements in reporting and support mechanisms. So we need to improve police resources in order to recognise online hate crimes so that it can accurately record online incidents in the same way as offline hate crimes. We need to continue to increase the ability of social media sites to regulate content, including continuing the fantastic work of the EU initiatives of handing out fines to social media sites that do not successfully answer reports of online hate. We also need to find a way to successfully advertise alternative support mechanisms to reach these individuals that are experiencing online hate, so the victims of online hate are aware that the support is available to them, no matter if it's a crime or not. Despite, or rather because of the need for these recommendations, this presentation has explored how victims continue to face considerable barriers to accessing effective support from online hate in terms of police and social media response, and even the response of charities and organisations that are charged with protecting the LGBT individuals and hate crime. This reflects a much deeper societal problem relating to the equal distribution of human rights and their prioritisation within an increasingly hostile world. And I think that this is something we all need to strive to change as we bring equality to the table for all. Thank you very much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed my presentation and the insight I've given you into LGB plus online hate in all its forms and the impacts and the responses that are needed. Like I said, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you very much.